Hello, good afternoon. This is the 8th of February. It's 22 degrees Celsius, and it's a pleasant day. Outside, the sun is out. I'll be spending an hour or more in the sun in just a little while after recording this video. And probably by then, I would be able to upload this to YouTube as well. As usual, there will be no edits. It will be a live recording of me going through some research. And research doesn't have to be complex, deep, and complicated, difficult to understand. This research is not to make a display of knowledge. This research is to prove to be of use. Excuse me, it has to be backed by evidence. So the way I like to record it is that you can see the same evidence that I'm looking at. So how long will this video be? Maybe half an hour. I'm not absolutely sure. But how many tabs do I have open? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And already I can tell you, well, why don't I show you? If you lose interest when I show you the first tab, then that would be a clue of your bias, of your prejudice. I'll tell you why. This is NIH.gov. Let me enlarge the text. So this is from the US Department of Health and Human Services. NIH, the institution. Now the results are for natural immunity. There are 4 tabs that you can use. You can look for everything. So when you select everything, you can find news, you can find videos, and you can find clinical trials. Obviously, if you go to news, then it will have the updates that are categorized under news. Are there videos? Yes, there are. Which, if you wish to see, they seem to be pretty short, except for one. And that one is about 30 minutes long. The rest are 3.14, 1.56, 2.09, 2.53 minutes, and 1.47 minutes. So those videos are not long, and I believe they would still be able to make their point in that short time. Now, if you really want to get in depth, these are clinical trials that are accumulated under the NIH website. And people around the world, health professionals, researchers, students around the world, go through these results through clinical trials. And you will find a lot of clinical trials. Now I'm just scrolling, and I did not know. All right, I would say this one I did not know about. Ivermectin and human immunity. There's a full text view. And there's a clinical trial on impact of nasal saline irrigations on viral load. I had not seen this. What is the chance that I've seen every trial? There's hardly a chance. because there are hundreds of thousands of clinical trials. Where was this? This was Vanderbilt University Medical Center. And this trial has an not active recruitment status. This was first, it says active not recruiting. It was first posted on April 15, 2020. Excuse me, and it was last updated October 28, 2021. So that is a very long time, over a year. And if you think that saline nasal irrigation, and the other is with saline with baby shampoo nasal irrigation, what advantage is there for a pharmaceutical company to find something that would be, well, whatever, let alone beneficial or not beneficial, to be interested in such a trial? And yet, such a trial has been conducted. I'm very glad it has been conducted. And it says it's still active. You want to go through the details, you can go through the details. Ages eligible for study, 18 years and older. Sex is eligible for study, all. Except healthy volunteers, no. And then they go through the criteria for inclusion and exclusion. So typically, as a clinical trial is conducted, you have the names of the investigators, the name of the study director, the center where the trial is going on or has been completed. If you want to go get in touch with those who have conducted the trial, you can do that. Excuse me, I would admit that I have become a little sidetracked because I just looked at these results. But I consider it fortuitous to have come across these results, because my policy is when I upload a video to YouTube, I put the links for all the tabs that I've consulted. And it just so happened this was not part of my plan, but here, clinicaltrials.gov, ivermectin and human immunity. Without going through the details of this trial, let me say this, because I've come across a set of arguments and a way of thinking. People who talk about natural immunity also are on the side of using ivermectin. Is ivermectin a part of the human immune system or natural immunity? No, it is not. It is an external agent, a pharmacological intervention to help a human being in the case they require this prescription. As simple as that. But I'm very glad that on March 9, 2018, this was first posted. And they spent over a year and then posted the results July 12, 2019. And that was the last update that was posted. This is from the University of Georgia, and information provided by responsible party Adrian Wolstenholme, University of Georgia. Drug, ivermectin, other placebo. You don't even have a second drug in this study, just ivermectin and placebo. This is an interventional clinical trial, only 12 participants. Primary purpose, basic science. The effects of ivermectin on human innate immunity against filarial parasites. So this is not in relation to COVID-19. It is not studying the antiviral effects of ivermectin, which has been studied, especially in vitro and in vivo also. But I will leave the link and you can read the study. That is your wish. I'm glad I came across this. Now, the results that I've opened from this search, I only opened results which were categorized under news. And you can see the color of the link changes. Of course, in a search engine, you click on a link and it would remember that the link was opened. So even if a week from then, or however long the browser remembers it, you would see that, okay, yeah, this is the link I clicked on, or there's a link like, well, this one, natural lipid acts as potent anti-inflammatory. Well, this is a link I did not open. So it's good. That's standard in search engines. So these are the results I have open. And I don't have it in any particular sequence, and I haven't even read these actually. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through quickly from top to bottom each page, and I will focus on what catches my attention. So I'm not even going to the other tab after this. I'm just looking at this one. Let's look at this. Flu infection study increases understanding of natural immunity. When did this come out? January 23, 2018. This is before COVID-19. Let's look at the introductory paragraph. People with higher levels of antibodies against the stem portion of the influenza virus hemagglutinin, HA protein, have less viral shedding when they get the flu, but do not have fewer or less severe signs of illness, according to a new study published in MBio. HA sits on the surface of the influenza virus to help bind it to cells and features a head and stem region. Scientists only recently discovered that humans naturally generate anti-HA stem antibodies in response to flu infection. And this is the first study of its kind to evaluate pre-existing levels of these specific antibodies as a predictor of protection against influenza. The findings could have implications for flu vaccine development, according to the authors. Scientists at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, part of the National Institutes of Health, conducted the research. So you would say, what? In 2018 they're learning this? And the flu has been around for so many decades. Why didn't they learn this sooner? Excuse me. And if you ask those scientists, they would tell you the same thing. We wish we had learned this 20 years ago. But that is not what happened. They learned this recently. 2018 is when this article is published. And then you can look at the details. There is a link, a previously reported trial data. The authors note that antibodies against NA remain the only identified predictor of disease severity according to previously reported trial data. And then it gives you some details about the article, who NIAID Director Anthony S. Fauci, MD, is available for comment. Matthew J. Memoli, MD, Director of the Clinical Studies Unit in NIAID's Laboratory of Infectious Diseases, is also available for comment. So this came out as news. If any of the news channels was looking at this news release in 2018, they could have come across this and they could have questioned Anthony Fauci about the findings. They could have written directly to him or the other MD. That's part of their responsibility to respond to questions like this. And not only news sources, of course, news sources are so many different kinds, and some news sources are focused and dedicated on news related to medicine. So their staff would have on board PhDs or MDs who could have specifically questioned them about the study. But literally anyone, if they wish to, can ask questions. Is this an interesting study? Interesting news release? Absolutely. We'll find out why more. Here is something from September 24, 2020. Scientists discovered genetic and immunologic underpinnings of some cases of severe COVID-19. Let me say one thing before I read anything from this article. And I keep making this point. When you criticize an institution, it is one of the most unreasonable things to do. Because an institution is an organized collection of thousands of individuals, and all the information that that institution has put out, is putting out, and will continue to. Are there chances of mistakes there being in the part of what the institution puts out? Absolutely. Is it true that an institution puts out some information and it becomes outdated? Something the NIH said 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 years ago. Is it true that 3 years have gone by and now they've found something which adds to their understanding or even contradicts what they said 3 years ago? Well, in science, yes, that is a possibility all the time. Otherwise, what would have happened is medical textbooks that were printed in the 1960s and 70s would still be the standard curriculum for medical studies today. But if you pick those books up, not that they're entirely irrelevant, but if you pick those books up and you compare them to the books of these days, books that came out in 2020, 2022, 2021, you will see the obvious difference of how much knowledge changes, how much is added to the knowledge. So that's just part of the scientific process, and part of being a healthcare professional. Instead of getting involved in criticizing institutions, is to keep up with what is provided as information. And this is just news items. These are not the actual studies we're looking at. But it's a good enough source for awareness, which anyone in the world can look at. So let's look at this. Once again, scientists discovered genetic and immunologic underpinnings of some cases of severe COVID-19. What? It says new findings by scientists at the National Institutes of Health and their collaborators help explain why some people with COVID-19 develop severe disease. The findings also may provide the first molecular explanation for why more men than women die from COVID-19. When did they release this? 2020. September 24. The researchers found that more than 10% of people who develop severe COVID-19 have misguided antibodies, auto-antibodies that attack the immune system rather than the virus that causes the disease. Another 3.5% or more of people who develop severe COVID-19 carry a specific kind of genetic mutation that impacts immunity. Consequently, both groups lack effective immune responses that depend on type 1 interferon, a set of 17 proteins crucial for protecting cells and the body from viruses. Whether these proteins have been neutralized by autoantibodies or, because of a faulty gene, were produced in insufficient amounts or induced an inadequate antiviral response, their absence appears to be a commonality among a subgroup of people who suffer from life-threatening COVID-19 pneumonia. This much information is in a news article from the NIH. And I encourage you, as I put the link to the article, to go through the details. And under every one of these news articles, I see that NIAID Director Anthony Fauci, MD, and then in this case, many other MDs, are people you can contact in regards to this particular item. So if you write an email to niaidnews@niaid.nih.gov, the email would circulate among all these people. In the subject, you would include the title of this article. I would, if I wrote down, then I would say I am seeking more information or clarification regarding the article published on September 24, 2020, and I'll give the name of the article. So the person who is responding knows exactly what I'm referring to. And then I would specify in the email, excuse me, about what is my reason for writing the email. I'm not going to be writing an email just to say, hello, Anthony Fauci, how are you doing today? Did you drink some coffee in the morning? How was it? Where did you buy your coffee, and what do you have with it? What do you think? Is it okay to have muffins with it? And what kind of muffins do you recommend? Nope. That is not the email I would be writing, and if he comes across it and doesn't respond ever in the future to what I wrote, then I would not hold him responsible. Let's go to the next tab. And we're already past 24 minutes. No problem. If you have the time, I have the time too. NIH, this is from April 17, 2020, NIH to launch public-private partnership to speed COVID-19 vaccine and treatment options. Health agencies, leading pharmaceutical companies to join forces to accelerate pandemic response. Participating organizations, government, National Institutes of Health, HHS Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, U.S. Food and Drug Administration, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, European Medicines Agency. Nonprofit Foundation for the National Institutes of Health. Industry, and all these industry partners, would you just look at the names here? Wow. Any one of these is a multi-billion-dollar company. GlaxoSmithKline, Johnson & Johnson, Eli Lilly, Merck & Co., Novartis, Pfizer, Roche, Sanofi, very familiar names. Abvi, I think that's related to Abbott. Huge and very old companies. Are they free from errors? No, they're not. But do these companies also do good work? Good. If you ask the person who is in need of products that they make, you will find opinions vary greatly. These companies make products that hurt people, and why people get hurt, there are several reasons for that. If the person prescribing a product, a medicine, does not have in-depth understanding of the product, one reason. If that person does not understand how to control the side effects or the duration for which the medicine should be taken, or the patient abuses the drug, all of those reasons aside from if the company itself conceals or minimizes some necessary information that should have been disclosed and emphasized. But a company stands to lose just as an individual stands to lose. The difference, of course, is an individual is personally affected by an adverse event. Loss of health, even loss of life is possible. The company takes a loss in reputation, takes a loss in the form of fines where they are imposed, but its body, it doesn't have a body, it doesn't have a physical form that is going to be affected. It's not like sometimes people wish it happened that the government would give an order that this medicine that hurt these people was manufactured in this plant. We're going to shut down the factory. Sometimes people wish things like that happened. Well, let's read this article. I know there are deviations, but this is part of what I'm doing. The National Institutes of Health and the Foundation for the NIH, FNIH, are bringing together more than a dozen leading biopharmaceutical companies, the Health and Human Services Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and the European Medicines Agency to develop an international strategy for a coordinated research response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The plan accelerating COVID-19 therapeutic interventions and vaccines active partnership will develop a collaborative framework for prioritizing vaccine and drug candidates, streamlining clinical trials, coordinating regulatory processes, and/or leveraging assets among all partners to rapidly respond to the COVID-19 and future pandemics. This is part of the whole of government, whole of America response the administration has led to beat COVID-19. So when people say there is a coordinated effort, of course there is a coordinated effort, and that is the intent that was publicly disclosed on April 17, 2020 through this news article. So if you see there is a coordinated effort, there is a coordinated effort, and here is the declaration of intent. But to say that this coordinated effort is motivated by malice, it is motivated only by profit, it is motivated by the desire to kill people for population reduction. Let me just clarify here. If that were the case, it would not be in a news article. If I had the power with some of my friends to launch a terrorist attack, do you think I would be giving it out in the news? This is what I and my friends are intending to do. Here, we are going to start a biological weapons program. Here's the news. Here are all the parties involved. And get ready. That would be a strange way. Instead, they would be secretive and clandestine efforts rather than publicly disclosed messages of intent like this one. Excuse me, let's read more. This is a quote. We need to bring the full power of the biomedical research enterprise to bear on this crisis, said NIH Director Francis S. Collins, MD, PhD. Now is the time to come together with unassailable objectivity to swiftly advance the development of the most promising vaccine and therapeutic candidates that can help end the COVID-19 global pandemic. Now, the names of Francis S. Collins, Anthony Fauci, and others have come out in conjunction with the development of SARS-CoV-2 in Wuhan, and how some scientists expressed their doubts that this virus is of natural origin. They were supremely convinced that the virus was made in a lab. And when the research was going on in the lab, was it their intent for the virus to get out? For there to be a lab leak? Or why was the research being done in the first place? I mentioned this in another video, that when these researchers are done, just as there's gain of function, there's also loss of function. So when scientists are working on this, it is not as if they know what is going to happen. Of course, they have understanding, and understanding grows, and they can purpose their research for a certain goal. And during the research, there are tons of findings. Tons of findings. Some may have nothing to do with the original purpose. It may, in fact, be the opposite of what they were trying to do. It is possible. All of those findings become part of the body of knowledge, which is for the purpose of learning, and it is for the purpose of both good and harm. both good and harm, but it is knowledge. That is how science is. So this is slightly longer, but if you want to look into the news article, of course you can. What are the things they mention here under active? Active will have 4 fast-track focus areas, each of which will be led by a highly motivated working group of senior scientists representing government, industry, and academia. 1. Standardize and share preclinical evaluation methods in an open forum that allows for comparison and validation by, and they mention all these. 2. Prioritize and accelerate clinical evaluation of therapeutic candidates with near-term potential by, they have these bullet points. Third one, I'll read a little more in detail. Maximize clinical trial capacity and effectiveness by connecting existing networks of clinical trials to build capacity and capabilities, including specialization in different populations and disease stages. Leveraging infrastructure and expertise from across NIH networks, including adjuvant discovery and adjuvant development programs. AIDS Clinical Trial Network, Clinical and Translational Science Awards Program, Clinical Trials in Organ Transplantation, Cooperative Centers on Human Immunology, HIV Prevention Trials Network, HIV Vaccine Trials Network, Human Immunology Project Consortium, International Network for Strategic Initiatives for Global HIV Trials Insight Network, National Cancer Institute Community Oncology Research Program, National Cancer Institute's National Clinical Trial Network, Prevention and Early Treatment of Acute Lung Injury, PETL, Clinical Trials Network, Strategies to Innovate Emergency Care Clinical Trials Network, that's SIREN. T and B cell discovery programs and immune epitope database, vaccine treatment and evaluation units. All these things are related to the actions taken by the NIH and other agencies in conjunction with the events happening since COVID-19. And they also say advanced vaccine development. So all these things are mentioned here. Now, if you are of the opinion that human health can do better without pharmacological intervention, that human health can do better simply through nutrition, through exercise, rest, good lifestyle, very good. Let's be the kind of people who never have to depend on whatever these institutes or these pharmaceutical companies are doing. Very good if that happens. But the reality is that billions of people, billions, not millions, billions of people depend on this kind of research. That is the present day reality. And the reasons for that is where we are in the modern world, with the developments in civilization, developments in technology, developments in how humans live, and so many other things. So the world has changed. And we could wish these things all disappeared and we just went back in time and everybody had good health, or there was some kind of divine intervention, and then we won't have to worry about any of these things. We wouldn't need them. And if there was a population that grew up that no longer needed the NIH, no longer needed the FDA, no longer needed any of these pharmaceutical companies, very good. They would become worthless. Their existence would no longer be needed. They will become obsolete. But is it going to happen overnight? No. And it's not going to happen if people lie about them. It's not going to happen. To make these institutions and companies obsolete would require a metamorphosis in the world. And that would have to come from individuals who recognize personal responsibility. So let's think of these in terms of emergency care. Let's not think of these as part of our daily lives. No. In fact, a lot of what they're doing is in regards to certain populations, like organ transplantation or Cancer Institute oncology research. So it's in relation to certain critical care needs. It's not talking about your breakfast and your lunch and your dinner. It's not talking about your exercise. It's not talking about your time spent in the sun or out on the beach. That's not what they're talking about. Let's keep this in perspective. Well, going on 42 minutes, beyond 42 minutes, but here we are. March 30, 2021. T cells recognize recent SARS-CoV-2 variants. Now, what interest would a pharmaceutical company have in publishing this? Why would they publish this? But they have. And what is this image? This is an actual image, scanning electron micrograph of a human T lymphocyte, also called a T cell, from the immune system of a healthy donor from the NIAID. Amazing image. Wow. Okay. When variants of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, emerged in late 2020, concern arose that they might elude protective immune responses generated by prior infection or vaccination, potentially making reinfection more likely or vaccination less effective. To investigate this possibility, researchers from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, part of the National Institutes of Health and colleagues, analyzed blood cell samples from 30 people who had contracted and recovered from COVID-19 prior to the emergence of virus variants. They found that one key player in the immune response to SARS-CoV-2, the CD8 plus T cell, remained active against the virus. The research team was led by NIAID's Andrew Red, PhD, and included scientists from Johns Hopkins University of Medicine, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and the immunomics focused company Immunoscape. That's a new word I have not come across. Immunomics focused. Well, you learn something every day. Immunomics. So again, I'll leave the link for this and you could read it. But I hope you're getting familiar with the NIH, the devil's agency. Well, I'd leave that judgment up to you. Gene variants found associated with human immune system autoimmune disease. Again, this was one of the recommended results, although I was looking only in conjunction with COVID-19, but actually I typed for natural immunity, so I didn't even specify COVID-19. This is from 2013, and let's read this from where the quotation mark is. We know that certain diseases run in families. From this study, we wanted to know the extent to which relative immune resistance or susceptibility to disease is inherited in families, said David Schlesinger, PhD, chief of NIH's Laboratory of Genetics. If your mother is rarely sick, for example, does that mean you don't have to worry about the bug that's going around? Is immunity in the genes? According to our findings, the answer is yes, at least in part. So that is a great area for research. The study team led by Francesco Cucca, MD, director of the National Research Council's Institute of Genetic and Biomedical Research in Italy, discovered that variants in particular genes had very significant effects on the levels of one or more particular types of immune system cells. A number of these genes are also implicated in risk for various autoimmune diseases, including ulcerative colitis, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, and celiac disease. So, what an important field of research. Heredity that was understood by generations, and they're finding out what the immune system and autoimmune diseases have to do with heredity. That is, they also have an NIH, National Institute on Aging. So I'll leave the link for this also. And this one I am not going to go through. But I did take out the result because this was not part of the news, but this was part of the research, clinical trials. And the background, I'll just read here. The long-term course of immunity among individuals with a history of COVID-19, in particular among those who received a booster vaccination, has not been well defined so far. Immunity after COVID-19 and vaccination follow-up study over 1 year among medical personnel came out September 25, 2021. And this is the last article, and the name of this article is, the heading is, Why Do Some People Get COVID When Others Don't? Here's what we know so far. Came out on Feb the 3rd, 2022. And the key points are, an increasing amount of research is being devoted to the reasons why some people never seem to get COVID, a so-called never COVID cohort. There are multiple anecdotes of COVID cases being discovered among couples, families, or groups of colleagues who have mixed closely but where not everyone has become infected. This could be due to a variety of factors ranging from prior infection with a similar virus to genetics. So, cross immunity could be one of the things they discuss here. And I'll mention again, who mentioned cross immunity? In my knowledge, first that I came across, Dr. Peter McCullough. He mentioned cross immunity. Other doctors too, but that's the one I remember. So, what do I want to look at? Here, let's look at this subheading, Never COVID People. An increasing amount of research is being devoted to the reasons why some people never seem to get COVID. A so-called never COVID cohort. Last month, New research was published by Imperial College London suggesting that people with higher levels of T cells, a type of cell in the immune system, from common cold coronaviruses were less likely to become infected with SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. That is exactly what Peter McCullough had said. Cross immunity is the phrase. So, Dr. Ria Kundu, first author of the study from Imperial's National Heart and Lung Institute, excuse me, said that being exposed to the SARS-CoV-2 virus doesn't always result in infection, and we have been keen to understand why. We found that high levels of pre-existing T cells created by the body when infected with other human coronaviruses, like the common cold, can protect against COVID-19 infection, she said. However, Kundu also cautioned that while this is an important discovery, it is only one form of protection, and I would stress that no one should rely on this alone. Instead, the best way to protect yourself against COVID-19 is to be fully vaccinated, including getting your booster dose. Excuse me. So, I'll leave the link for this article as well, and you can read the rest of it. But let's not say, this is from CNBC, let's not say they don't want to talk about natural immunity. They don't want to talk about cross immunity. They want to only promote vaccines. Is this the language of mandate in any shape, way, or form? Not at all. Not at all. But if you just looked at this image of the article, I'm going to guarantee 100 people came across this article. If 100 people came across this article, they just looked at the featured image and didn't bother to open the article and read it. What do you think their first and last impression about the information would be? So this practice of featured images also, is one thing. But if you're the sort of person who just judges every book by the cover, well, you have a ways to go. So they have a subheading here, the genetic factor. I'd like for you to read that as well. And they have a link to the British Human Challenge trial. Is that linked to... Well, that's another CNBC article. And they have some terrible images, of course. It's funny to look at, actually. But I think they have one person to write and another person to pick the images, because it doesn't seem like the images have come from the mind of the person who wrote the article. But the name of the article, the writer, Holly Elliott, that's mentioned there, and I think this would be her Twitter handle. But I don't think Holly is the one who picked these images for this article. Anyhow, we're going on nearly 55 minutes. And I think I've devoted all the time I needed to. I might not even revisit this subject. But I just wanted to clarify that yes, the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, and all these agencies and other agencies around the world, they haven't forgotten about natural immunity. They talk about it in great detail also. They're well aware of natural immunity. And they understand it a lot better than any of the critics of these institutes. They understand it from top to bottom, as far as we know this day. Better than any person who stands up in criticism of these institutes. A person is no match for an institute. As simple as that. So I am going to end the video here. I'm going to refresh this tab and I'll show you what exactly the time is right now. It's 24 degrees Celsius. It's 12:59 p.m. and it's the time the sun appears in my courtyard. What good timing. Perfect timing on my part. And I'm going to spend some time in the sun. I think more than an hour. I'm done here. I'm going to upload this video to YouTube. I hope you listen. I hope you learn. I hope you enjoy it. And it helps you. I enjoyed making this video. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Goodbye and take care.